Welcome, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. See who's in here. Only got a few, so let me give some shout outs. Amethyst, hello. Cherry, hello. Waleska Baca, the seven of us. Irish Fan, D. Marie, Lindsay, Danny. Did I say Lindsay already? Canine Rescue. All right. It's good to see everybody. So this is something that so far, this is a case where so far Josh from Dad Challenge Podcast has talked about this. Annie from 10 to Life is fired up about this. But I just got a hold of the actual arraignment of the mom, and I use that term extremely loosely. And I don't think I'm going to go into too much depth on this. I think I'm going to leave that to, I'm going to leave the, all of the information that you're going to get to Annie and or Josh, or, because they've been doing a fantastic job covering this. I just felt, you guys know me, when there's video to be had, I like to go over it. I like to have my reaction to it. And this just stumbled into my feed. So, yeah, so this is this is mostly for those of you who have been, who have, subscribed to me through Josh or Annie. So this is out of respect for them and their coverage of this case. So make sure that if you're not subscribed to Annie or Josh and you want details on a situation, it's going to make you mad, because it makes me mad. So I'm going to have to, yeah, the Cherry says the queen of true crime, but that's actually, it's a typo. We all know Cherry's phone has these issues for some reason. Doesn't seem to recognize the word real when it comes to crime. So it's the queen of real crime. Check out Annie at 10 to Life at https://youtube.com/c/10 to life. So yeah, it's an ugly case. I'm just going to go ahead and start playing this. Basically, in a nutshell, there were 3 young boys, I believe, between the ages of 15, 12, and 9, I want to say. And apparently these 3 kids, I'm not sure, I don't know their names. They were found neglected, starving, in worse condition. And the most disturbing part about this would be 15, 7, and 10. Thank you, Danny. The worst part about this is that they were found with a deceased body of a young child, one of their siblings, that was badly decomposing. And apparently it was there just decomposing for over a year, which makes it very difficult for me to imagine those circumstances. Makes it very difficult for me to wrap my head around why it took so long for these boys to be tended to, why this wasn't reported. And I have a link in the description for, if you a national link, that if you see or hear anything regarding child abuse, you can report it. As you know, my mods usually drop the DV hotline, but in the description on this video, there is a hotline for to report child abuse or child neglect. And that's something that I don't have a whole lot of patience for. And now, apparently the deceased child was about 7 years old, and this child, the cause of death is determined to be blunt force trauma, repeated blunt force trauma. Sorry about that, guys. Right. Well, the neighbor said they didn't know anything. There was a few neighbors interviewed. Apparently, there was a few neighbors who, like, again, if you want more in-depth detail, go over to 10 to Life and watch Annie's last videos on this. But apparently these neighbors actually helped and brought the 15-year-old food, and they thought it was only the 15-year-old in the apartment, and they would bring the 15-year-old food and let him charge his phone or whatever. So there's a lot of questions. There's questions like, well, if the kid is 15, then why wouldn't he, and if he had a phone, why wouldn't he, ask for help, call out for help? Well, there's a lot of reasons why that could be. And I'm not even sure under those circumstances, if I could even blame an 18-year-old for dealing with it the way that they did. So it's a very difficult thing to think about. But I'm definitely, by default, I am not going to jump to the position of faulting a minor in this situation in any way, shape, or form. I'm just not going to go there. So as far as I'm concerned, that child is a victim. As far as I'm concerned, the siblings that he has are alive now because of him. So I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that there should be any blame or any shade thrown at this child. Right. There's a lot of questions. Who is paying the rent? They were in that apartment for over 6 months. So who is paying the rent? Why didn't anybody smell anything? That's another thing. Like, I don't care. Okay, I understand. Okay, maybe it's not easy for the smell of this apartment to go outside and surrounding neighbors could smell it. But I don't care. I don't care. If you are a child and you're neglected, chances are you're wearing the same clothes over and over and over and over and over again. And these clothes, the clothes that you're not wearing, are sitting in the same house as a decomposing body for well over a year. I'm going to assume that the smell is on those clothes, and those neighbors that helped these kids, they had to have smelled something. So that really, really, really bothers me. There's a lot of things. Now I don't know a lot of details, but this arraignment, there's a little bit more details, and there was also a press conference that took place today. We're going to go over both of those things. And I'll tell you, the second that you see this arraignment and you see this woman, Gloria Williams, the way that her demeanor, and it's hard to tell, granted, because it's a filming of a screen, okay, and so it's a little grainy. First of all, second of all, she's wearing a mask and what appears to be sunglasses, and how she's allowed to do that in a courtroom is beyond me. So I don't know, or maybe it's just that grainy and I can't really tell. But we're gonna look into this, and we're gonna hear some very disturbing facts about this case, and this is going to make this is going to probably make you pretty angry, because I'm pretty angry. And I started to watch this and then I cut it off and I said, you know what? I'm gonna go live and give a reaction to it. So let me go ahead and, what's up, Siren? It's good to see you, buddy. Yeah, she's wearing like, how does she get to do that? Show up to court like that? I mean, and why do you think that's a good look?
Actually do that. Let's see.
Now, nothing's being said yet, so don't say anything about the sound.
All right. Gloria Yvette Williams.
This is as loud as I can get it.
Good morning, Ms. Williams. Ma'am, you're charged with the third-degree felony of injury to a child by omission, the first-degree felony of injury to a child causing serious bodily injury.
She looks bored.
The second-degree felony.
We just saw her, guys. We just saw her stick her hands in her hoodie pocket, and then as soon as he explains her charges. Now, in all fairness, like I said, it's hard to tell because she's got sunglasses on and a mask, due to the COVID thing. So it's very strange to see what her, but it looks like very dismissive, like, oh God, if I have to hear this one more time, is how she kind of comes off right there. And that's really, that right there, red flag right off the bat. Let's do that one more time.
You're charged with the third-degree felony of injury to a child by omission, the first-degree felony of injury to a child causing serious bodily injury, the second-degree felony of tampering with evidence when that evidence is a human corpse. I have looked at the alleged probable cause facts for these three charges, including the supplemental statement of facts, which I believe was supplied to the public defender's office. I do find that there is sufficient probable cause for all three of these cases to go forward. All three cases will go to the 230th District Court. That's going to be Judge Chris Morton. Will you need a court-appointed lawyer from Judge Morton? Would you like the help today of Attorney Chris Henderson from the Public Defender's Office?
Now, I don't know if she's acknowledging, saying yes or no.
For each of these three charges, what is the state's request?
In the first-degree felony, I am requesting a $500,000 bond. And in the injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence cases, I'm requesting $250,000 bonds. And I am opposed to personal bonds, not necessarily because the injury cases are prohibited by this court for personal bonds to be granted, but mostly based on the horrific facts and circumstances of this case, which resulted in the death of a 7-year-old child. As is reflected in the statement of probable cause, officers were called out to a residence in Harris County on Greencrest Drive on October the 24th of this year regarding the death of the minor complainant, who is the child of this defendant. There were 3 juvenile witnesses who are also complainants in these cases. There was a 15, 10, and 7-year-old child who are witnesses to the incident. Officers arrived, spoke with the 15-year-old child, who stated that he found his younger brother, the deceased minor complainant, in a bedroom of the residence sometime around Thanksgiving of last year, 2020.
Oh my God.
He believed this defendant would call the police, told officers that she never did so, and that she then had moved out of the apartment, leaving them in the residence with his deceased younger brother without adult supervision. He stated that they had found his younger brother approximately 1 week before Thanksgiving. He also told officers that the co-defendant, who is the boyfriend of this defendant, would lock them in a bedroom and he would hear them hitting his brothers while he was in the room with them. He stated he told this defendant about the conduct, but she ignored him, said she would talk with the co-defendant, and the 15-year-old stated, quote, that never worked. Officers also spoke.
Okay, so basically what's happening at this point right now is the scenario she's explaining is that the 15-year-old reported to police officers that he actually heard the boyfriend beating the deceased 7-year-old and tried to stick up for his younger sibling by telling mom and saying, hey, you know, I heard this, I heard it happening. And her response to him was I'll talk to him. Don't worry about it. I'll talk to him.
With the 10-year-old complaining witness, who is the complainant in the first-degree felony serious bodily injury case, who stated that he was actually in the room when the co-defendant assaulted his deceased younger brother, striking him in the face, feet, buttocks, back, his legs, and testicles with closed fists and feet. He stated that the co-defendant then laid his brother on the floor and put a cover over him, that the defendant...
Okay, I realize it's a little late, guys, but I you know, of course this has to be said. Obviously right now there's some really, really difficult things to listen to right now. Very, very grim, very infuriating details about regarding child abuse. It's not easy for me to listen to. This is, like I said, this was going to be a reaction once I saw the beginning of this arraignment and I saw it was authentic. I decided I was going to go over it and have a reaction video with you guys. And I don't blame anybody. I don't blame anybody who isn't up for this. But here I am. I made my bed. I'm laying in it. I'm moving forward. I'm doing this because something tells me that maybe some of us need to be woken up. Maybe we're not truly understanding the horrifics involved in this really sick, horrible problem in our society right now. And so I'm going to move forward. It's not easy for me, and I don't blame anybody who can't. But I'm choosing to move forward. If you choose to stick around, I appreciate it, but I don't blame anyone who can't. This is a tough case. But I think awareness needs to be brought. And if this is what it takes, consider this to be tough love to those who are willing to take it when it comes to educating yourselves in this type of problem that we have in our society right now.
And then came in the room to check on his younger brother, saw the body under the cover. She began crying, then made him leave the room. The 10-year-old stated that the defendant and the co-defendant then began fighting because the co-defendant had killed his younger brother. He stated that the defendant then came back another day, checked on his younger brother, and found that his body, feet, and teeth had turned into a skeleton. He stated that the co-defendant would beat him as well, hitting him on his buttocks, legs, stomach, and face, and punched him in the jaw, causing his face to be swollen. He stated when the co-defendant would drink beer and alcohol, he would get very strong. The 10-year-old also stated that his younger brother was on the floor under the cover, that his body was a skeleton, and that his hair was off. Law enforcement officers on scene observed that 10-year-old child to have extensive swelling to his face and jaw when they made contact with him on October 24th. He was transported to Texas Children's Hospital, where it was discovered that he had blunt force trauma to the face, which would require surgery because medical treatment was not sought or obtained when he was injured. During a forensic interview the following day, he disclosed that the injury had occurred when the co-defendant struck him in the face approximately 3 weeks prior, and that this defendant was aware of the injury but did not seek or obtain medical aid for him. The 7-year-old child was also interviewed, who stated that he saw it when his older brother, who is now deceased, was injured. He said he saw the co-defendant punching his brother, that his brother was lying down and the co-defendant kicked him with his feet, that his brother was not moving and the co-defendant continued to kick him and stared at his younger brother as he kicked him. He stated his younger brother's eyes were black and that he stopped blinking during the assault, that they pulled back the covers and saw that he was really dead and saw roaches everywhere on him. Officers also spoke to this defendant on October the 24th, 2021, when she was interviewed. And she stated that in November of 2020, before Thanksgiving, she had gone into the bedroom where the deceased complainant and 2 other children were at. She witnessed the co-defendant punching her now deceased son. She said she stopped him from continuing to assault him, that she entered the bedroom the next morning and found him covered with a blue blanket, that she pulled back and found him to be deceased. She confronted him, the co-defendant, who stated he was sorry that he lost it and punched him, and continued punching him until he went to sleep. The co-defendant told her that he covered him up with a blanket after he went to sleep. The defendant admitted that she knew he was deceased in November of 2020, but did not notify law enforcement at the time of his death because the co-defendant had told her not to. She was afraid that the children would be taken by Child Protective Services and that she would go to jail. Officers on scene on the 24th found the deceased and badly decomposed body of the 9-year-old complainant discovered under a blanket in the bedroom. An autopsy was conducted, and the cause of death was found to be a homicide due to homicidal violence with blunt force injury.
You can also see how difficult it is for this prosecutor to read these details. You can tell this is probably her. Who knows how many times she's already had to read this prior to reading it here. So at this point, one might be numb to something that they have to read when they're prosecuting a case, when it comes to something like this. But when it comes to a case with details like this, you can tell that it has some sort of effect on her that other cases most likely have not. I can see it on her. I can see this poor woman trying to maintain professionalism as best as she possibly can. And imagine how difficult that is for her in her own private cubicle at work via Zoom, in such a comfortable setting for herself where you're more likely to let go, bust out in tears. I do not envy this poor woman right now. but she has all my support in the world because she is charged with the responsibility of bringing justice to that little boy who was murdered and his siblings who were found neglected and in such poor condition.
I'm requesting those bond amounts, and I'm opposed to lower bonds as I do have concerns for the safety and protection of these surviving complainants, and do not believe that this defendant should be permitted to have any contact with
See, she's on fire.
or any children in the community. I am requesting a protective order for the surviving children, and as well as urging the state's motion for bond conditions. I believe there was one filed in every case, so the first degree, that she have no contact of any kind with any of these children or the co-defendant, that she be ordered to surrender any travel documentation in the form.
Let me address this comment here real quick. So Jessica Neff here is saying that they need to increase this poor excuse for a woman's charges to murder in some degree. I felt that way too until I was listening to this. I actually had this change of heart as I was sitting here listening to this, as I'm sitting here with you. And I wouldn't say a change of heart. It's more of a change of opinion, simply because the thing is we're hearing the testimony, and this testimony we're hearing according to, well, it's not a testimony, but according to the statements that the children gave this prosecutor and gave officers, the statements that they made, they're stating as witnesses that it was him, the co-defendant, Coulter. I already forgot his first name. Cunty Coulter. That's what I'm going to call him. I probably won't stick to that, but that's what comes to mind at the moment. And this guy, he, according to these kids who are witnesses in their statements, and extremely detailed statements, by the way, guys. I mean, talking about how the eyes of the little boy went black and stopped blinking. It's, and I believe that's her testimony as well. But if the kid's testimony and her testimony line up, right, chances are the kids are probably telling the truth. Who knows? Brian Coulter. Yeah, I wasn't sure it was Brian because I know we were talking about Brian Laundrie, and I thought maybe I'm thinking of Brian because of the last case, blah, blah, blah. That's how my head goes. Sorry about that. But, so what really concerns me here, it sounds like they only have, let's look at it like this. They can only prosecute on evidence that they have, right? They can only charge on evidence that they have. If there's not enough evidence that she actually committed the crime, they're not going to charge her with it. If there's no evidence that she actually contributed to the actual act of murdering this child, then they're not going to charge her with anything in that regard. It sounds to me like with the charges that they have on her, they're throwing everything that they can actually prove on her right now. I mean, and everything. This is not a situation where they're finding sympathy in her at all. So they're charging her with whatever they can possibly charge her with.
Form of a passport, visa, or other travel documents, that she not possess or use any firearms, ammunition, or other weapons, or use, possess, or consume any alcohol, controlled substances, and that she be drug tested, that she be subject to an electronic monitor with a curfew of house
and that's
arrest,
if she comes up with the bail money.
Any kind with any child under the age of 17, or participate or supervise any activities involving children under the age of 17.
All right, very well. Mr. Henderson.
I can't hear him. Okay, so apparently we don't have any sound coming from the actual courtroom other than the judge's mic. Yeah, sorry about the sound, guys. That's not on my end. But this is the only footage of the arraignment that I could find, and unfortunately, this is the best we can do. I can't hear him at all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Henderson.
And just for clarification, the protective order is being requested in the first degree.
1745064.
Correct.
All right, and the court will issue the MOAB under that order. Ms. Williams, I'm going to set bond
Where's
for
his
you
rub?
on the injury to a child case. I'll set that bond in the amount of $350,000. On the tampering with evidence charge, I'm going to set that bond in the amount of $300,000. And on the injury by omission, I'll set that bond in the amount of $250,000. I am going to issue an order of emergency protection. It's going to require you to have no contact with the minor children, Trayvon Lee, Jordan Lee, or Javion Kirkland. They'll be identified in the MOAB by their initials because they are minors. In addition, I am going to issue a bond supervision order. That bond supervision order is going to require you to have no contact with those children. You may not use, possess, or consume any illegal drugs or alcohol if you make bond. You may not use or possess any firearms or other weapons. I do want you to get a GPS device on within a day of your release. There will be a 24-hour curfew. You are prohibited from having any unsupervised contact with any person under the age of 17 years. You are not to supervise, participate, or attend any event where children under the age of 17 years are participants, and you must remain 500 feet away from any school, park, playground, or other location where children regularly gather.
I love it.
That is, that bond supervision order will be in the first degree case, same as the order of protection. Ms. Williams, are you a United States citizen? All right, if you'd have a seat for just a moment, I'll bring you back up. We'll talk more about the order of protection.
All right, so that's that, folks. So what we've got going on here right now, now that's if she comes up with the money for the bond. Okay, we're looking at, let's see, that's $950 or $950,000 that she's going to have to come up with in order to make bond. I don't think she has that kind of money. I don't think she knows anybody with that kind of money, or even a fraction of that money. So chances are she's not going to be able to come up with it. She's going to be detained. She's going to be locked up. But what I love about what this judge's decision was, and it was the motion of the prosecution, they have to do that. The judge, rarely ever do you hear a judge just throw that stuff out there. The prosecution has to recommend it to the judge. And so, at least I think so. So as far as that going, this prosecutor is she's all business, man. I'm absolutely loving her. I felt in my heart what it must have been like for her to have to read those details and have to work this case. This has got to be probably the toughest case, or at least one of the toughest cases that this person has ever worked. She looks young. I've never heard of anything like this happening. So I mean, I had a really, really hard time listening to her have to, I mean, obviously because of the details, but I had a really hard time, because I was feeling for her so much. So yeah. So kudos to her for recommending, because basically the result that we have here is, if by some miracle, if by the actual miracle takes place that this woman will be released, she doesn't get to have a picnic. She doesn't get to have fun. Okay. She has no freedom. She does not get to engage in the habits that she, because a lot of us are sitting here thinking, well, you know what? She goes back out in the streets, and she's not allowed to have any contact with her kids, well, I mean, that's not exactly a punishment. You're giving her an out from her responsibilities by court order. So, she wanted that out. She's on trial right now. Well, not on trial necessarily, but she's being charged with basically wanting to live a life completely and totally responsibility free of children, and she gets that. But here's the thing: is not only is that ordered, but she can't be around any other kids. She can't even be within 500 feet of a school. On top of that, she's not allowed to drink or do drugs. She has a curfew. So and she can't leave town. So she doesn't get to do anything. She doesn't get to enjoy herself in any way, shape, or form. She gets to sit around and watch TV all day, right? But she doesn't get to engage in her drug habits, which I guarantee you she has. She doesn't get to engage in her drinking habits, which I guarantee you she has. And like I said, that's if she comes up with the bond money to get out. So I don't see that happening. I simply don't see that happening. I don't see her coming up with $9,000 either. I don't see her coming up with $9,000 either. I don't see that at all. I don't see anybody that knows her putting up the $9,000 after what she did. I'll be shocked if that happens. And this being such a high profile case, you know what? I mean, unless I have this blind devotion to a family member, right? And you know what? My kid, I might. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if I was in that situation, but say I'm an elderly old man, right? And my son down the years has kids, and he's in this neglectful position, not in the murder position, but in the neglectful position. Yeah, I was going to say that sounds light. Thank you. I just didn't feel like doing math in my head at that moment, but thank you. $90,000. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And even still, $9,000, I don't see her coming up with. Like I said, I don't even see a relative. Like maybe my son, if I was elderly and he got into some trouble, I'd be like, all right, whatever. Okay, here's $9,000. You can make bail, but me and you, we're done after this. I think we're done. I don't know. I feel like in theory, that's how I would be. Maybe not. But I think this type of behavior is completely unforgivable, because if this is my family, then those kids are my family too, right? And you did this to my family. You failed to act. You failed to take care of them, which was your responsibility. So, but And I'm not even sure if I would even do that, you know? So Cherry, maybe the Laundries will put up the bond. Uh, I wouldn't put it past them at this point. Anything those people do doesn't surprise me. Anything Northport PD does doesn't surprise me at this point, as sad as that is. But yeah, I don't see anyone putting up bond for this woman. I just don't see that happening. So in the event that she does come up with this miracle of bond money, I don't see, you know, it's not like she's going to be walking through the park, you know, drunk and getting high with her buddies, staying out all hours of the night. That's not going to happen. Now, I'm going to pull something else up here. And again, for those of you who stuck around, I do appreciate it. And for those of you who can't hear me now because you left, but I don't blame anybody. I honestly don't blame anybody for leaving the chat, because it is a horrible, horrible situation. And there's a lot of really gory details that some of us just don't need to hear. Some of us are already aware of how horrific child abuse can be. But some of us aren't. And some of us need to wake up to it.
Influences our conversions, analyze all our marketing channels. Welcome back. Our coverage of Gabby Petito's final days has taken us tonight out west. It is part of our upcoming News Nation Prime special, Getting Answers. Correspondent Brian Enton is joining us live tonight from the road.
Hold on.
And he
Sorry,
is in Wyoming. Brian, when we last talked to you last night, you were...
Good morning. I'm Ed Gonzalez, your Harris County Sheriff, and thank you for joining us this morning as
Harris County Sheriff's Office. We are anticipating a press conference here. The podium there, we're waiting for them to step up to the microphone to give us an update on that case we've been following since this weekend involving the murder of a child at an apartment complex in the Alief area. We will bring this to you live as soon as they begin speaking. But Andy, we do know that the mother and her boyfriend are facing charges in this case.
That's right. Brian Coulter faces a murder charge and was supposed to appear in court this morning, but did not. However, a judge did read the charges against him. So again, we are waiting for Harris.
So did he just not show up for court, or
to give us an update on the case? A health evaluation. The child's mother, Gloria Williams, was supposed to go before a judge as well this morning.
Yes, we understand that Brian Coulter, who is the boyfriend here, he faces a murder charge. He was supposed to be in front of a did not appear, but a judge did read the charges against him. And we're going to be checking in with our Brittany Jeffers here momentarily to give us the very latest from court.
I hope to God that this doesn't go to trial, because I don't want these kids. I want these kids to be on the road to recovery, like, and just moving forward, and that's it. You know, from here on out, I hope that there's no trial. I hope that these kids never have to talk to another law enforcement officer again. I hope that they don't have to sit in a courtroom. Now they probably wouldn't, obviously, but I hope that they don't have to talk to a judge. I hope that they don't have to give any more official statements. I hope that they get counseling. I hope that they work through their experiences and grow and become amazing adults and get through this. But I hope that process can begin now. instead of being delayed because they have to relive this over and over and over again, because these shitbags can't take accountability for their own actions.
This morning, as the judge did read those charges aloud. But again, we are anticipating here a press conference with the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez taking the podium now. Let's listen.
Good morning. I'm Ed Gonzalez, your Harris County Sheriff, and thank you for joining us this morning as we provide an update to our community on a recent case. There are many jobs in our agency that are tougher than those involving abused children. These incidents are horrific, heartbreaking cases of abuse and neglect, and they involve the most innocent and defenseless among our community. On Sunday, our patrol deputies and investigators responded to a gruesome child abandonment case. For many agency veterans, it was the most disturbing scene they worked in their entire law enforcement career. It seemed too horrific to be real. It's hard to even explain to you that feeling. Our investigators immediately began piecing together what happened and trying to unfold a seemingly senseless death of a child who was supposed to be loved and cared for, and trying to understand unspeakable living conditions for the dead child's siblings who were left alone for months to fend for each other. We are here to share what we know today and to share our continued commitment to these children and our community. We must work tirelessly as child safety advocates to protect our most vulnerable, and we must work as a team. Sergeant Dennis Wolford with our homicide unit will be talking through the charges with you and any updates on this active investigation. And I want to emphasize active. It's still an active investigation that is continuing. Briefly, I want to provide a scene recap. On Sunday, October 24th, 2021, at about 3:15 p.m., our deputies received a phone call from a 15-year-old child who advised that his brother had been dead for a year and his body was in an apartment unit at 3530 Greencrest near West Park Tollway. He also stated that his parents had not lived in the apartment in West Harris County with him and his siblings for several months. Our patrol deputies found a 15-year-old and two other male children in an apartment unit, ages 10 and 7, who appeared malnourished and showed signs of physical injury. They also found skeletal, dry remains. The Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit, Child Abuse Unit, and Crime Scene Unit investigators responded to the scene. The children were taken to a local hospital to be assessed and treated. The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services received emergency custody of them. Now, I want to pause just briefly just to say that in the midst of the darkness and this horrific situation, that I'm so glad that that 15-year-old finally reached out for help. I want to say that I'm glad that he found assistance at the end of the other line with one of our call takers. And I'm comforted to know that when he opened the door, and there was a Harris County Sheriff's Office deputies there, that they could finally receive the care and protection that they've needed for so long. And that's what law enforcement does every single day, finding people in their darkest moments. The mother of the children, 35-year-old Gloria Yvette Williams, and her boyfriend, 31-year-old Brian Ward Coulter.
Or did that come off a little bit like... Now, I mean, I'm grateful to the police officers for what they've done, but doesn't the action kind of speak for itself? Like, did he need to like pump up, you know, the sheriff's office like that as the sheriff? I mean, he is a politician after all. You know what I mean? Wouldn't have, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being nitpicky. You know what I mean? But did he need to do that? Like, I felt like it was, you know, it just, I don't know. I mean, am I being a dick? Am I being a dick? Maybe I am. I don't know. But it just seemed a little unnatural to you know what I mean, to throw that in there.
Were located Sunday night and interviewed by investigators before being released without charges. Now, I think it's important to note that at that point, it's still an ongoing active investigation. We didn't find them until late that night. And so we have to make sure that we're being thorough not getting ahead of the evidence and the investigation that's ongoing. And so at that point, they were released without any charges. On Tuesday, October 26, 2021, the Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit charged the mother's boyfriend, Brian Coulter, with the murder of the child, who was confirmed to be 8 years old at the time of his death in 2020. The manner and cause of death were ruled a murder by multiple blunt force injuries, according to the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. The mother of the murdered child, Gloria
That's a good
Williams,
question.
was charged with
Was
injury
that
to a
was that a dig at CPS? Were they? I mean, but that would imply that they're in some sort of weird publicity competition with CPS, which is also super unprofessional. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to. Don't take digs at CPS. Like, do I think CPS has their problems? Absolutely. I just spent a year talking about, and a year in total, give or take, talking about the problems with CPS in Texas and the problems with protecting kids in Texas. So I'm no stranger to that as far as that subject goes. But I mean, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see discourse between agencies when it comes to protecting kids. I don't want to see them competing for clout when it comes to protecting kids. I'm not saying that that's the case here. I'm just exploring the comment that Robin Banks made here saying, was it a dig at CPS? I don't know if it is. I'm going to go ahead and say no, because I'd hate to think that that was the case. So no, I'm going to say, because I certainly freaking hope not, that was not a dig at CPS. But I do feel like, I mean, hey, okay, we're giving, I feel bad for these sheriffs for having to see what they had to see and deal with what they had to deal with when it comes to this case and many other cases that I have no idea what they've had to experience. But I mean, we already appreciate the sheriffs, man. We do. You know what I mean? There was no need to turn this into a whole, don't forget it was a sheriff's officer that was standing at the door, and we were the ones that were there to help. That was not necessary.
Child by omission and tampering with evidence. Both Williams and Coulter were taken into custody without incident by our criminal warrants unit investigators, and this remains an active investigation. At this point, I want to introduce Sergeant Dennis Wolford, the lead investigator with our homicide unit, that will speak about the child's murder and updates. A lot of this information will still be general. Keep in mind, there are certain things we could answer, other things we simply can't at this point for a variety of reasons. And it remains active because there's always a possibility, as we mentioned, that there could be additional charges, that charges could be upgraded. So it's still an unfolding investigation at this point. But at this point, I introduce Sergeant Wolford.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Again, my name's Sergeant Dennis Wolford. I'm the supervisor of the homicide unit that was tasked with investigating this. It's a group of 6 investigators. The lead investigator is actually Deputy John Craig. Child abuse also made the scene with us, and they were invaluable in the input that they gave us dealing with CPS and things like that. One of the things that I want to express, I know that there was a lot of people upset that these people weren't taken into custody right away. And one of the things you have to understand is, one, the law of statements, the laws of the state of Texas and how we get these things into trial. We knew at that point that these children were safe because they were in CPS custody. And, the decision was made not to arrest that night. And the reason is because a lot of evidence has to come in before we can actually file charges, including a ruling from the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences on.
Okay, so this is something that I've talked about many times, guys. I've gone over this many times, and this officer just confirmed it. When you find yourself in an outrage as to why certain people have not been arrested, even though a case has gone very, very public and there's a lot of news media coverage of it, right? And you're wondering, why isn't this person in custody? The It's just because what we know is not enough. Okay. Law enforcement's job is to take what the media has informed us of. Law enforcement's job is to collect the evidence that proves it in a court of law. And you cannot charge somebody with something unless you have something to put in front of a judge if a trial comes. You just can't. It's the law. You have rights. So if there's not enough evidence, and they're not going to waste their time arresting someone, because the whole point of an arrest is merely, it's a prelude to a potential trial that may take place. Very important to remember this. You guys might wonder, why do you keep talking about this every time? Well, because there's always people who say, why weren't they in custody right away? There's always going to be people who say that. And every time there's people that say that, I'm going to go over this and I'm going to explain this. Law enforcement's job is to collect evidence in order to prosecute and make sure that they get a conviction. Their job is to collect evidence for the district attorney to convict them with. That's their job. So once they're charged, it's because they have enough evidence to do that. So that's the only reason. And this man just explained it exactly the way that it is.
What caused this child's death. We also had numerous people, forensic interviews with the children and stuff like that had to be done. Plus, we have to corroborate what the children are telling us before charges can be filed. So believe me, we, from the very beginning, me, the six of us, the child abuse guys, we were focused on getting these charges done. We wanted to get them done as quickly as possible. But above all, murder investigations, child deaths, child murders, they are methodical investigations. And our end goal is to see that justice is served, not to just put people in jail. We want justice to be served. I will answer any questions that I can for you. There may be some that I cannot. Again, as the sheriff said, in my long time of working homicides, this one's up there. This one affected us.
We'll circle back with the question just a bit. Let me.
Sure. Just.
And I also want to mention that we have members here from our Crimes Against Children unit as well. Lieutenant Lovett and his team are here as well. And so they'll be present if there's certain questions that perhaps they can answer. I do want to just mention a couple things that may come up before we get into other parts of it, is that it's our understanding that the children that were present in the apartment, that there were two fathers involved, not involved in the scene, what I'm saying in terms of connected to them. We're told, we haven't confirmed it yet, but that one is possibly deceased already and the other was simply not involved in the lives of the children, so they were not in the picture. There's also, I believe, at least two other siblings that were not in the apartment that are elsewhere as well. So I just wanted to mention that we are aware of those dynamics as well. I want to just briefly say it in Spanish as well, just recap what we had. El día domingo, el 24, como a las 3:15, recibimos una llamada de una adolescente de 15 años que avisó que...
We've been listening to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, Harris County, talk about the case of the mother and boyfriend who are now both facing...
These producers are like, okay, go to the anchor, because our listeners don't speak Spanish.
Charges. And Andy, what we've been...
Which is ridiculous because they're in Texas. So, yeah. But they don't need the Spanish translation, because if they didn't speak English, they wouldn't be watching this channel.
Following since Sunday, 3 children abandoned in an apartment unit, and the decomposing remains of their 9-year-old brother also found in that apartment, and they were to appear in front of a judge this morning.
That's right. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez telling us this morning that the 15-year-old reached out for help, talked to a call taker, and advised that call taker that his brother had been dead for a year. Dry skeletal remains were found inside of that apartment. The children's mother, 35-year-old Gloria Williams, is charged with injury to a child by omission and tampering with evidence. Her boyfriend, 31-year-old Brian Coulter, has been charged with the murder of Williams' 8-year-old child.
And the mother, Gloria Williams, who we do anticipate will be before a judge at any minute, and we'll be checking in with Brittany Jeffers and go to her live momentarily here. But we're going to stay with this press conference. The mother is being charged with injury to a child by omission and also tampering with evidence. The boyfriend in the case here,
Take a look at her, man. Just take a good look at her. I mean, now granted, it's just it's a mugshot. It's one fraction of a moment captured, but that fraction of the moment that's captured absolutely no emotion. It has absolutely no emotion. This is someone that most of us as human beings can't even begin to relate to. Because along with this picture, we also have the details of the circumstances that led to this picture being taken. And I don't see a person with a soul. I don't see a person with any capability of love, of any instinct of nourishment. I see a person who just has kids just to have kids. And for whatever selfish reason that would be. Because make no mistake, I can't see this person doing anything for any other reasons that aren't self-serving in some way, shape, or form.
$31-year-old Brian Coulter, Andy, that you mentioned, he's being held for a mental health evaluation. So he was not in court this morning, but we understand the judge did read the charges against him. But just a
yes, M. Wills, I already played that
situation right here for everyone. Let's go back to Sheriff Gonzalez right now.
Just, to the siblings that remain and anyone that has ever cared for these children in some form or fashion. And so our heart breaks for them, and we're going to do everything possible to be their aspects through the part of the system that we control, and that we leave no stone unturned, as I promised at the scene. And we will also, our prayer, or my prayer, is that the remaining children find the love, support, and protection that they so desperately need and deserve, and that they have been missing for so long. And I hope that their future is better than their past. We're also told that they hadn't been in school since last May. So for more than a year, they've been missing out on that as well. So there's a lot of factors to this, a lot of moving parts. And so that's where we're at right now. I'll go ahead and pause just to see if there's any, I'm sure there'll be questions, but Donald?
What were the children's injuries? You said when you found them, they appeared to be malnourished and physically injured. What were their injuries?
Lieutenant, do you want to speak a little bit to the injuries, or does anyone know just the physical injuries?
So the 9-year-old does have an injury to the jaw that we come to believe was caused to his jaw by the boyfriend, Brian Coulter, several weeks ago. There was no medical attention given for that injury. That injury is going to cause, he's going to have surgery, and that surgery will happen soon. They were very thin. One of the first things I asked them are they hungry, and they said they were. And the first thing, I don't know if it was because we're cops or what, but they wanted donuts. And we immediately went and got them Shipley's donuts. But the physical injury that was evident to the 9-year-old, that's the only real overt sign of trauma to them as far as physical.
I want to mention as well, because that was something that was very disturbing, is that back to the different parts. We
And I want to point out, man, I appreciate these cops for giving us, so much information, because this is an open investigation. It's still an ongoing investigation, and yet they're still giving us a lot of information, and I'm grateful to them for that, because lately that's been happening a little bit more in these cases that we've been covering in real crime, and so like I'm grateful that that's taking place now, more than usual, and and the cops bought the kids donuts. They wanted donuts, man. So the cops bought up some donuts. They knew where to get them. They were like, "Yeah, we know the spot. We know the spot." They hooked the kids up with some donuts, man. Right on.
We had the dry remains, skeletal remains that were present. So clearly, in our initial observations, the body had been there for a long time, and so that was disturbing. But on top of that, we had a serious injury to another small child that apparently had not received, to our knowledge, any kind of medical attention, any pain treatment or anything like that during the course of this. I also want to point out as well, I mentioned a little bit that the apartment was in a deplorable condition. We saw soiled carpet, no furniture at all, no bedding, no blankets, nothing that we could see.
Oh my God.
And it appeared to have roaches and flies and just things. It was very bad condition for anyone, especially children, to live in.
I spoke with neighbors who were the ones helping give that 15-year-old food, and they didn't know there were two other boys inside that apartment. To your knowledge, did the two younger boys ever leave the apartment for several months? Were they stuck in the apartment?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, I do not believe that the two young boys were ever allowed to leave that apartment. There is some evidence that perhaps they were locked in, possibly different parts of the apartment, and they were not to leave that apartment, from what I understand.
With what you can tell us, it obviously took, the 15-year-old was brave enough to call you guys, but it did take a year. Fear, what can you tell us about what he's saying to be threatening? What took so long to call authorities?
I believe it was absolute fear. What the investigation is leading us to the fact that this mother and her boyfriend have been together for a few years now, a couple years. And over time, I think that the beatings were consistent, and mainly, involving the younger children. And the 15-year-old just absolutely afraid.
And what's sad is I look at this person and I see somebody that could be beautiful in every way, right? You have all these kids and you could be a fantastic mom, teaching them, working hard, and there's women that would love to have the features that this woman has. Look at her eyes. She has these beautiful almond-shaped eyes, beautiful skin. There's a beauty about her, but the ugliness of her actions makes it almost impossible to see. I'm always fascinated when I look at people, in these situations, because I'm just like, God, just imagine in an alternate universe, if you were a good, decent person. What a difference.
And was basically hoping or relying on his mother to at some point contact law enforcement and advise of his deceased brother in the house, and that didn't happen. And I think after a year's time, the 15-year-old boy finally said enough is enough, and that's when he decided to contact law enforcement.
So those children have been through a lot of trauma, and so again, fear, the death of a sibling and other things. It's just heartbreaking, and so the trauma is just at another level. So, one in Spanish.
Sí. ¿Dónde estaban estos señores? ¿Dónde estaba la esposa? La madre y este señor. ¿Dónde los encontraron?
All right, you've been listening to Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, talk about the extremely disturbing specifics here, Andy, relating to this case involving the 3 children that were abandoned in that apartment unit, along with the remains of a younger brother.
Want to get to our Brittany Jeffers, who is joining us live from downtown Houston with an update from court. Brittany.
Yes, you continue to hear those details of what those children endured. It's truly heartbreaking to
Luna,
hear.
you got to
And,
use your
as we
imagination.
mentioned, we have 2
You
adults
gotta
here who are
use your
facing
imagination.
charges. And it was earlier this
That's all
morning
I'm
that
saying.
Brian Coulter, the boyfriend in this case, he did not appear in court this morning. And the judge says that is because he is currently on a mental health evaluation hold. Now, he didn't appear. However, the judge did read his charges, that murder charge. Now, we learned that his bond was set at $1 million. And as part of this bond supervision order, he is not allowed to have any contact with the children who are in that house, or with any minors for that matter. We're also told that he is not allowed to have any contact with Williams. Now, this is if he is able to post bond. Now, focusing on Gloria Williams, the children's mother, she is set to appear in probable cause court here this afternoon. She was set to appear around 10 o'clock. Court was delayed. They are currently in session right now. We don't know exactly when she will appear, but the judge did say that it will be she will appear last for her safety, but we do not know at what time that will happen. Of course, we will stay on this. We will continue to keep you updated as we learn more. Reporting live, I'm Brittany Jeffers, KPRC 2 News.
Certainly a story we will continue to follow throughout the day, both here on the air and online. Brittany, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's I agree with you. Haley has hope. You know, this is an issue that's, you know, of course, these particular circumstances I've never heard of in my life, which is what makes this case so shocking. But unfortunately, this problem in our society is going to continue to take place. It's always going to happen. But what we can do as productive members of society is we can face the problem, make ourselves aware of it, try not to turn our backs on it, because I'm sure, you know, these people, this is my observation of these neighbors. These neighbors were probably thinking that they were doing the right thing. Their hearts were genuinely in the right place, or else they wouldn't have bothered to even help. Right? But there's also a side to them that think this isn't any of my business and I'm not going to get too involved. Give them something to eat, but that's all I'm going to do, because the rest is none of my business. I'm no snitch. Right? But these are kids. You know what I mean? These are kids. And as adults, we have a responsibility to the youth in our society. We have a responsibility to protect our youth. Our youth holds our existence in their hands. We pass on this planet to them. That makes them our responsibility, whether they're our kids or whatever. Obviously, no, I don't believe in interfering with how someone raises their kids, as long as they're doing it ethically and doing it out of love. It's not my place to tell somebody how to raise their kids. I heard Josh from Dad Challenge podcast say, you know, I'm totally against spanking. There's no excuse for it, blah, blah, blah. I agree with that, but I also feel like it's not my place to interfere with how people raise their kids, because some people just grew up that way. Sometimes spanking is effective. I don't agree with it. I agree with Josh in that sense, but I also come from a place of, you know what? I don't like the idea of telling people how to raise their kids, because I'm old school. You know, I also come from a Hispanic family. and most Hispanic families, you can ask most of them, there's probably spanking that takes place if you come from my generation. It's not uncommon. And I don't think it necessarily creates violent people. I've heard that argument too, because it's a violent act. What you're doing is you're teaching violence, and then you're creating a violent person. I'm not sure if I completely agree with that. Do I think that it ups the chances? Absolutely, for sure. Which is why I don't agree with spanking. But there's a lot of people that have been spanked that don't spank their kids because they were spanked. So do I agree with spanking? No, I don't think people should be spanking their kids. But do I judge someone of an older generation before mine for spanking their kids? No, I can't judge them for that either. So, because we do what we know, it's been what's done for generations and generations and generations and generations. But this situation doesn't even apply. It's not even in the same ballpark, because we're talking about an act of rage and hatred. It's as though they went out of their way to neglect these kids. Like they actually had to make the effort to neglect them, is what it seems to me. Not to mention the violence that took place in that home. And for a mother to not have a protective instinct, even if she was not the person actually inflicting the physical abuse, to be as complacent as she was about it, and being a mother, well, that's to me just as much a form of abuse. I almost understand if she's afraid, but she was complicit to the point of being an accomplice, because she didn't do anything to try to provide for them. She showed no actions of wanting to protect. She showed no signs of having a protective instinct of these children. None at all whatsoever. Because even a woman who's afraid of their spouse because the spouse is violent, that woman will still find a way to make sure that her children eat and have a bed to sleep in. At least a mattress on the floor. Something. So to compare this situation with spanking, I'm not gonna agree with. I think they're very different realms of situations here. But this is sheer abuse, sheer and utter abuse. There's no sign of I'm doing something to teach you how hard the world can be. There's not even that. Some people make bad choices with that being their intention, but there's not even that. I can't even give them that. This is just pure neglect, abuse, and murder, NorCal. That's all it is. Right. I think I did too, Christy Myers. I think I did too. And I'm mostly angry. I'm mostly angry about it. I think that this is, I'm going to be following. I don't know how much coverage I'm going to do on this. I think you're going to get all the coverage that you absolutely need from this case from Annie from 10 to Life and Josh from the Dad Challenge podcast. I think that you're going to get everything you need from them. I'm not saying I won't continue to talk about it. If there becomes a situation where more awareness needs to be brought about a particular issue that this case ends up bringing to light, then yeah, I'll continue to talk about those issues. But as far as the case and the details go and the updates go, I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you go to 10 to Life or the Dad Challenge podcast for this. Now, on a lighter note, I'm going to change the subject. We're closing that subject altogether. I feel like I've said everything that I feel like I need to say on the subject. Before I close this out, though, Cherry, you've been seeing Cherry in chat dropping a link to the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. That is a program that I hold very dear to my heart. If you have the means, if you're capable, please consider becoming a big brother or a big sister, because I can tell you from experience how much of a difference and an impact on a positive level that can do for a child who's had some hard luck. When I was a kid, I had a big brother, and he was the only person I trusted. I was in the worst state of my childhood, and him being there and living in St. Louis and going to baseball games and going to, the St. Louis Cardinals baseball games, going to the St. Louis Blues hockey games, going to the St. Louis Cardinals football games, because we had the Cardinals football team back then. We were terrible, but and going to the movies and just going to his house and listening to he had a great record collection. So they really, really they one of the counselors in the place that I lived in sat down with me with the application for this thing. And we just carefully went over, the questions, like what I like. And I was a depressed kid and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I was just like, I don't know. I remember this being, 11 years old and just being like, I don't know. And then, then just like this person helping me pick these things, well, what do you like? Well, I see you throwing catch and playing baseball and trading baseball cards with Clayton. And I see you doing this, and I see you talking about movies. And when we watch movies, you always know everything about all the movie stuff. Right. And just somebody who really invested in who I was as a kid, and I had that there, and this was just for the application to get a big brother. And so me being honest on that application, and then they match you with this adult who has the same interests. And I'll never forget that dude coming to this place. And I remember I was in trouble. I was on punishment. I've told this story before, I think. And I was on a punishment where I didn't get to eat dinner with everyone else. I had to come back later and go eat in the cafeteria by myself, because I was on it was like a timeout type thing. It just so happened that day, the dude, it was scheduled for him to come meet me. And so he came and sat in the cafeteria with me. They served him a tray and everything. And he was like looking at me like, dude, do you eat this? And it was like chimichanga day or whatever. And it was gross, right? Because their chimichangas are not, it was just institution chimichangas. It's no good. And he was like, you eat this stuff, man? And I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, if you could eat anything right now, if you had your choice of whatever to eat right now, what would you eat? And I was like, a Big Mac, right? He was like, let's go get a Big Mac. What are we doing here? Let's go get a Big Mac, And it was cool because it was the 80s and he was matched as my big brother. He was allowed to take me and do stuff. So he told the staff, and the staff was like, yeah, man, go, and we sat down at McDonald's and talked, and he was like, from then on, and I remember I was in his wedding. And the amazing thing is the person who took me in as my foster parent was my teacher in this place. And then she became like the principal of the education program. Right. And her and her husband took me in and fostered me. And him and I, because it was a separate program, we continued our relationship. And then I lost complete touch with him when I moved to Miami. And so I had like 30 years between us where we actually spoke, and then Facebook became a thing, and Facebook was around a while before he even got on it. And then I found him just a few years ago on Facebook. And tragically, Rachel Hudson, we were making plans to finally get together, but we never made anything solid. We were just like, yeah, we got to get together, and we stayed in touch. And but he unfortunately contracted COVID, and he fell to COVID's demise, unfortunately. So I never got to see him again. But I am grateful that I got to reconnect with him. I am grateful that he got to see me as an adult, as a man, and he seemed proud of it, proud of the man I'd become. So I'm definitely grateful that I got to have that with him. But the point is the impact that being a big brother or big sister can have on somebody, even for a short period of time, because you might just catch this kid at just the right time when he really, really needs everything else around him is just not working. And then he or she just needs that adult person that's just platonic, that just cares because they care. No other reason, not because it's their job, just because they want somebody to care about just as much, as this child does. So please consider, if you're able to become a big brother or big sister. But that's going to be it for me tonight, guys. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I love you guys very much. There'll be a Patreon stream coming soon. So join Patreon if you haven't. I love you. We'll do this again very soon, my friends.